Gonna raise her up with a big fat beat. Gonna rock, chop, ball, jack, do the glide right now.
You might have noticed was fellow former Mouseketeer Bobby Burgess there in the audience. And Annette also appeared many other times at Disneyland, not just as a Mouseketeer, but some of you may not know she actually participated in what's called Disneyland's second opening day in 1959. We had a huge amount of brand new attractions open all at one time. Can you imagine? One time in June of '59, one day, we launched the Matterhorn, the monorail, and the submarine voyage, all on one day. It was enormous. And if you watch the special Kodak Presents Disneyland 1959, you'll see that Annette was not only in the parade with her fellow co-stars of the then current film The Shaggy Dog, but she also danced with the Climb the Mountain dancers that were doing a song from the Disney film Third Man on the Mountain, which inspired the Matterhorn, for the dedication of the Matterhorn Mountain itself. So that's kind of a neat thing. But all of those attractions were huge, and the coverage was just enormous. Walt Disney was so proud of the way that Disneyland had grown, and today, still, the second opening day is a thing of great legend. The submarine voyage, which we're happy to still have with us today with its new Finding Nemo overlay, was something Walt really felt was a great feather in his cap, because it turned out that his Disneyland submarine fleet was the 8th largest submarine fleet in the world. And he thought that was pretty key. So he was disappointed. You'll know in the late 50s, the Russian Nikita Khrushchev was here at the premiere, and he went to Hollywood and all kinds of things on a tour. This is in the height of the Cold War, and he really wanted to come to Disneyland, but Disneyland was ready. But the Los Angeles security didn't feel that it would be a good idea. So Khrushchev was very mad, but Walt was very disappointed because he had this shot all lined up. He was all excited because he was going to have his picture with the head of the supreme world power from the other side of the planet in front of his own submarine fleet. So he thought that would be a rather nice thing, but alas, it was not to be. But you can see Walt there with the model of the zany sea serpent, who was the grand finale of the original submarine tour. And of course the monorail, there's the beautiful monorail red with Bob Gurr's wonderful futuristic swooshing design. Vice President Richard Nixon and his family cut the ribbon with Walt for the monorails, and Walt actually offered to install a monorail line to the Orange County Airport, but he was turned down by Orange County. So we still have it, but it was the first daily operating monorail system in North America, and it's still here today. And you can see up top there these skyway buckets that would go through, yes, that would go through the icy caverns of Matterhorn Mountain. So let's get on the skyway very quickly, along with some friends, and take a little trip from the Tomorrowland station through Matterhorn Mountain, which was, of course, the first e-ticket bobsled run that we ever had, first type of coaster. And at the end is the Fantasyland Skyway Chalet. And we go down the stairs, and where do we find ourselves? In Fantasyland. And what do you need when you arrive to a new location? A theme song.
Where
theme songs for the kiddie records. Fantasyland was very much going to be near and dear to Walt's heart from the beginning because, of course, it was the showplace and the home where all of the classic animated feature film characters that he'd so carefully brought to the screen would be made manifest for the first time to all of his many fans. So let's have a little look at Walt's personal intro to Fantasyland, once again from the Disneyland Story, the first anthology series telecast on October 27th of 1954.
Our last realm is Fantasyland. We cross the moat through Sleeping Beauty's castle into the world of imagination. Once here, we can fly with Peter Pan to Neverland, wander with Alice through Wonderland, ride Cinderella's pumpkin coach, in fact, anything your heart desires. Because in this land, hopes and dreams are all that matter.
We hope that through our television shows that you will join us and take part in the building of Disneyland, and that you will find here a place of knowledge and happiness.
And we did, didn't we? Now this picture here I'm especially fond of. Those of you who were with us last week heard us talk about the Firehouse 5 plus 2, a Dixieland jazz band that was a lunchtime group of Disney artists and others on the studio lot who became national sensations, including many record albums and appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show. So I really like this picture. This is from the cover of the Firehouse 5 plus 2 Goes to Disneyland LP. They performed here at Disneyland quite a bit, but I thought it was very fun that you see people like Ward Kimball, who's falling off there on the left. He's the one with the trombone, and Frank Thomas, who has the big bass drum. He usually played keyboards. They and their colleagues were among the people who first really brought these characters to life on the screen through their wonderful abilities to draw, to imagine, and to take Walt's concepts and bring them to life. So I thought it was terrific to see those people who made Fantasyland come true on the screen actually inhabiting the actual space of Fantasyland as it originally looked. And you'll also notice, if you look around, that the look of Fantasyland, the style, the color, is very different from what we have today. Originally, sadly, Fantasyland, since they said, oh, well, we know these characters real well, we'll get to those, it was the last area to really be completed. The castle was fine, but the interior really had to hurry up because they didn't have a lot of time when they were building Disneyland, and it was the last area done, and so a lot of things weren't quite as they had hoped that they would be from the beginning. So Walt had to kind of say, well, all right, we'll get to it later, but like most of his projects, he always had about 45 different laters on his plate. So in his lifetime, he never got to redesign Fantasyland. That was done by our Imagineers in 1983. But the original Fantasyland was bright and colorful and beautiful thanks to art direction and styling. The look was that of a medieval tournament, and so you have a lot of fabrics, a lot of silkscreen metals with vivid color that would make it seem like you were back in King Arthur's day, and not that you were going into a specific building from a film, but instead into a tent or a tournament house in which you would find an adventure from an individual motion picture. And the Disneyland Dark Ride was born right here in Fantasyland. You all know Mr. Toad and Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That was an opening day attraction here as you went merrily on your way to nowhere in particular. And we generally did not design the Toad vehicle for that kind of capacity that the Mouseketeers are showing. But our original Toad cars did seat 2, but today we're using the Toad cars in our expanded attraction, which actually came from Walt Disney World when their Mr. Toad and family moved out to make room for Winnie the Pooh in Fantasyland in Florida. But next door to Mr. Toad, of course, you had the original Mad Hatter hat shop with another piece of my childhood fears in the center. That was the scary-faced Fantasyland tree. And I didn't bring a picture of that just because. Let's go to Snow White instead. Much better. I'd rather face the witch than that tree. And the Snow White attraction actually was very frightening because, again, the concept was not that you went in to see Snow White and to passively view her story as you did when you watched the film. Instead, you were to be Snow White. So what was happening was you experiencing what Snow White herself had experienced. So you found the dwarf's cottage. You went through the scary forest. At one point, they actually had little threads hanging from the ceiling in the scary forest, so it was very dark. Yes, exactly. And this happened to me. That was very frightening too, but you didn't know what that was going by you. But it was a good example here that I could find of the treatment of the colors that I was talking about here on the Snow White attraction. This was a painting done by Ivan Earle, again, the Sleeping Beauty stylist, who worked very much on the early days of Disneyland. But this was the look they were going for, this beautiful, colorful, bigger-than-life kind of medieval fantasy festival in which you would be able to visit the different characters. Now, since the dark rides, as they imply, were dark inside, and the illumination of all the show elements was done with black light, it is very difficult to find pictures because you couldn't use flash, it would just destroy all the ambience. Fortunately, Viewmaster, remember those, the click 3D things? They came in, they brought their own photographers, and they had all kinds of wild, slow, fast exposure film, whatever they needed. So we do have a couple views, and here is the 7 dwarfs from the original Snow White attraction. There they are in their mind, but you can see how the lighting is crucial, or I should say the lack of lighting is crucial, really, to creating the fanciful ambient look that was accomplished with the black lights. And when they designed the attractions, the black lights were very much a factor. Ken Anderson, a Disney legend and one of Walt's jack-of-all-trades, said that you really had to think beyond the look of a movie, and sometimes the execution did not quite match what the painting's intention was, but you did what you could, and then you continued to upgrade. And these attractions, even though they opened in 1955, they were continually tinkered with and upgraded and changed in little bits all the way up until the complete redo of Fantasyland in 1983. But you can see the difference between the figure there on the right of the witch with the apple and what we have now, which very much more captures the spirit of the design of the character as Ken had intended, as well as what appears in the motion picture. Perhaps one of the most popular of the Fantasyland dark rides was then, and remains today, yes indeed, Peter Pan's Flight. And who wouldn't want to be flying out the window and off to Neverland? And it was something that I think fueled more people's dreams, because it was not a ride on wheels on the ground. It was something you couldn't do anywhere else. You could not fly anywhere else. And Walt was not immune. He was happy with this attraction, and he went on it many, many times, and he enjoyed it as well, because again, it was different, it was special, and it was therefore Disneyland. Now, a note on the pirate ship here. This pirate ship, along with many other wonderful elements for original Disneyland and other things through the years, was sculpted by a very unsung artist. He was not a full Disney Imagineer or employee. He did piecework, spot work for us, but seemed to always be employed. And his name was Chris Mueller, so he's my spotlighted artist of the week here. And Chris Mueller, spotlighted here on the tuna boat. You remember the Captain Hook Chicken of the Sea pirate ship? Yes? He sculpted the figurehead, the Chicken of the Sea mermaid, and there he is doing just that for the tuna boat. He also sculpted the vehicle that you just saw Walt in, the Peter Pan boat. And there's that picture of Captain Nemo's organ again there for the motion picture 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and therefore, of course, brought to Disneyland. He sculpted all the beautiful plaque elements and decorative pipes and things to make Captain Nemo's organ. Aren't those beautiful? But from the delicate scroll work of Nemo's organ, Chris was also in charge of sculpting the squid. So there he is working on the actual squid for the motion picture, which again was installed here at Disneyland in the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea area. He did a lot of work for Universal. He sculpted the original creature from the Black Lagoon and Jungle Cruise animals, and he worked all the way up until Epcot Center. Those of you who've been to Epcot, if you remember the beautiful American Eagle Golden Grill gates at the top of the escalator as you enter the American Adventure, that's the work of Chris Mueller. Can you imagine? From 1955 Disneyland all the way to Epcot, working away. But perhaps he is